So how are we dealing with this risk of violent death? And how can we explain that even though we are statistically safer than ever before, we do not feel this way? This is termed the safety paradox. Because we are safe in our day-to-day lives, we feel strongly opposed to violent events when we are confronted with them. In our modern-day society, there is a strong narrative of potential risk, of being told you could be the next victim. We have several national and international risk levels informing us on the likelihood of an attack. However, since we started with such risk levels, the risk has almost continuously been high or very high. This is why we are being told by the authorities to be on the lookout, to be alert. For those of you who visited the United States, especially New York or Boston, where I lived for several years, when you take the metro, there is a continuous announcement saying, if you see something, say something. Such announcements fit a larger pattern of messages, which continuously confront us with a hypothetical scenario of becoming a victim of some form of extreme violence. And this increases our overall fear of violence. So, how can we solve this paradox? How can we form a realistic idea about the risk of violent death? Well, on the one hand, we'll have to come to terms with the fact that as homicide will continue to exist, the risk for homicide is much, much lower than it was centuries ago, especially in Western parts of the world. However, as long as we, as human species, live on this planet, unfortunately, there will always be major and minor conflicts that will result in people behaving violently. On the other hand, we'll have to remind ourselves that we have come very far. We have been able to build a safer society for ourselves. We have invested in criminal justice systems, and compared to centuries ago, we have increased the likelihood for homicide offenders to be arrested and convicted. Furthermore, we are working hard in reducing access to firearms and knives that are both known to contribute to high homicide rates. In fact, firearms account for 4 out of every 10 homicides worldwide. Also, increasingly, policies are implemented to reduce the intake of drugs and alcohol, which are major contributors to homicides worldwide. We know, for example, that in countries such as Sweden, Finland, and Australia, who keep data on alcohol and homicide, that about half of all homicides were preceded by alcohol consumption, by the victim, by perpetrator, or by both. In other words, strong and legitimate criminal justice systems, limited access to firearms, and a reduced intake of drugs and alcohol have all contributed to creating a safer society globally. Again, we have come very far from a homicide rate of over 40 per 100,000 to a global rate of 6 per 100,000. These measures taken together will contribute to bringing down the homicide rate even further.